We're going to be making 2 of these beautiful wild rose flowers. We're going to be using the anemone cutter to do it, and just having some really nice pearlized stamens in them. We've brushed some gold onto it, and then we're going to be making some gold leaves to go with it. So the first thing that we want to do is get working on the center. So I've gotten a packet of the pearl medium-sized tips, and all I need is 1 packet for both. So when we're doing these, we use a 24 gauge wire. Just cut it into quarters using some wire cutters. Okay, so what we're going to do is just pre-bend this a little bit, so we've got a little bit of a loop there. Now, just holding on to it, place our loop through, hold it up and just make sure that it's roughly center, and then bring them all up. Turning it around, we're just going to twist our wire at the base there. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do is secure this, because obviously this is just going to keep moving around all the time. So I'm going to take some white parafilm. All right, so we're going to bring these up, the stamens, pull on the end of your parafilm just so that you get it to be stretchy, and then I'm actually going to start at the very, very base on the wire only. I'm not going to start on the stamens at all, because I want to get it really nice and solid on there before. So just stretching as you go, spin it half a dozen times. Okay, now I'm going to turn it upside down so I can take a really good look and slowly work my way over the start of the stamens and just come over by about a centimetre. Wrap and then slowly go up by a couple of millimetres on each turn. All right, and once you get it so that it's all the way back onto the wire, you can turn it up the other way. It's a lot easier, and you can use your fingers just to spin it around. Working in a diagonal so that it goes around all the way to the end, pull, and that's it. So we can flay them out a little bit. All right, so now that we get ready for our petals, we're going to use the same 24 gauge wire. I'm going to take the larger in a set of 2 of anemone cutters. I'm using the smaller version of a rose petal veiner as well. And we're just going to make what I like to call a wild rose. It just looks really open, really natural. So we take those, and we also need a cell cake board. Now these have the grooves in them so that we can place wires into all of our petals, but we won't have a section that's super thin where the wire is, because you need to have a bit of a groove for that wire to sit. We've also got our extra tools, rolling pin, some sugar glue, a ball tool, and a little bit of cornflour, as well as some shortening. So I'm just going to place the cornflour down here for later. It's not actually to roll anything onto, it's just to pat to get rid of some of the moisture. So we're going to grab a little bit. I've tinted this in an ivory already for us to work with, and I just want to use a small amount at a time. Keep the rest sealed up. I'm just going to work it with my fingers just to soften the gum paste. Now we're going to take our wire, get this all ready. Tiniest bit of shortening just around the groove that you're going to be using and into it. We're going to place our gum paste right there against the edge. We're just going to roll forward and sideways. Pushing out, but just trying to make sure that this section, this last centimetre here, we're not overworking too much. You can do it on the sides, but you don't want to, you want this to be a little bit thicker. So we can see here that we've got a really nice dominant groove there that we can slide our wire through. Just take a wire, dip it into some sugar glue lightly, bend your hand and just wipe it along that crease just to get rid of the excess. And then holding this here, I'm going to insert it and just make sure that you're looking at where the wire is going. You want the wire to go in by at least ½ an inch, about 1 to 2 centimetres or more. Okay, so now all we want to do, we can see that it's completely hidden here, is just drape it through the cornflour just so that we can work with it and cut it and vein it. And just line it up with the back edge here, making sure that your center line is staying true. So I can see that there's a little bit of a ridge here, so I know it's nice and straight. Give it a bit of a move. Pull the excess away first. It's a lot easier to do that, and then get rid of it. Now, all I want to do is give it a little pinch and a little flatten, and that just makes sure that that wire isn't going to pop back out again. We're going to take our veiner straight over the top, press not too firmly, but you just want to make sure that you're getting it all over. All right, so we've got our blue mat. Really simple with this, we're not balling it too much, we're not curving it too much, we're literally just going around once. So holding it like it's a pencil, start at the base, not right at this very end bit, but just the start of the circular shape. Pressing half on the petal and half off on the blue mat and going around, and you'll get a little bit of a flick to it. So we can move that off to the side. The last thing I want to do is, you can see here that they're nice and curved. I've taken just a little bit of paper towel, folded it a couple of times. I'm going to hold on to where the wire is and just gently pry the rest of this wire up, making sure that it's not affecting our petal by holding it there. And then all we're going to do is just have the very base of it resting up, and that will give us just a slight curve, so it's a little bit more natural and they won't be so jutted and angular. Now we want to do our second row, which is using the same petal cutter, but we're just going to be rolling it out and stretching it a bit. We'll place our bit of gum paste down, rolling it out, and this time we're just not going to roll it quite as heavily because we want to have a little bit of room to be able to stretch it after we've cut it. So just gently turn it back over. We've got our nice groove again. A little bit of sugar glue. Just use that crease in your hand to get rid of any excess, and then just line it up and threading it nicely through. And just drape that through our cornflour. It's just so it's easier to work with. That's the only reason I do it. So pop that down. Again, lining it up. All right, now before we do our veining, we're just going to stretch it out a little bit, just so that we've got a little bit larger for our second row. So what I like to do is roll sideways first, because I find it keeps the shape better than rolling at the very top section. This will help it to still bellow out sideways, and then coming up on a slight angle, and then we can take our veiner, give it a little press again everywhere. Again, not doing the very base because we don't want to thin that out at all. We're just going around half on, half off. Get some nice movement. Now if it's come up, just give it a little pat down so that it still stays nice and open. Hold on to it so we can start the bend. Place this in, and then you can curve it a little bit more again, and that will just give us a really nice arc shape. Now ideally let these dry for at least 1 to 2 days. The longer the better, it's easier to work with. Okay, now with our leaves, I'm working with just some rose leaf cutters. They came in a set of 4, and I'm just using the first 3. I've also got some rose veiners. You can get ones that are just like our petal, so that they've only got the one side. I particularly like these double ones though, just so that you get to have some definition and detail on the back of the leaf as well. Now these are going to be gold, but I'm going to start with the same ivory that we've been working with, because we're just going to be painting it with the gold. All right, so we've got a nice ridge, another 24 gauge, just the same as the flower. Now we'll take, we've got enough here to do our larger one. So exactly the same as we did before, we want to be right towards the base there, but you just want to make sure you get all of the grooves in. And then we're going to take our veiner. Now the nice thing about these is that they actually have a little groove mark to slot your wire into, so that you know that it's centered. So placing that in there, come over and just press firmly, and that will do the design on both sides. and then just be really careful when prying it up because you don't want to separate your wire from your leaf. And that's it. Exactly the same thing. We can dry it with a bit of a shape to it if we like. We're going to just do a little balling, starting from the center, straight down one side and the other. Now, if you want it to dry just like that, you can just pry it up a little bit. If you want to take a little bit more of your paper towel, just to get a little bit of a different kick out, you can help that along there, and that will just get a little bit of movement, or you could do it on both and have it fanning out. It's completely up to you. Now with the leaves, we're going to have 3 leaves on our top spray and 5 leaves on our bottom spray. So for our bottom one, we're going to have 2 of our largest size, 2 of the middle, and 1 of our little baby leaves. And for the top section, we're just going to have 2 of the medium size and 1 of the baby ones. Again, make some extras just in case. We'll let these dry for 2 days and then we'll gloss them over with a beautiful gold paint. All right, now we've got all of our petals done for one of our wild roses. You can see that they've dried up nice and firm now. It's been a couple of days. The first thing I want to do before I start adding any of our colour is change the angle that the petal is coming out of each wire. Now, the best way to do this is actually to hold your petal facing up, grab onto it with your index finger and your thumb. Then take your needle nose pliers and have them just a couple of mils out from where the petal starts. Don't butt it all the way up against because it applies a little bit too much pressure onto the gum paste. So just away a little bit and then bend it. And you want it to be where, if this is straight up and down, which it will be, you've got your petal sitting out just a little bit at about a 45-degree angle from where your little center is going to be. Okay, so hold on with your fingers just to the actual wire itself. Get a little bit of the gold and dab off the excess. So we're going to start brushing, working from our small section at the base and just flaring it out. You want to be quite firm at the start and you're just sort of feathering it towards the center of the flower. All right, so now we're ready to wire everything up together. We're just going to take a little bit of a parafilm again, and we're going to take our center point and we're actually just going to start wrapping again at the very, very base. So we don't want any petals to be around this top section at all. So what we want to do is start just below, stretch out our parafilm, and just wrap it around a couple of times so that it's sturdy. I don't like to do the first petal at the same time because it's always a little bit tricky to maneuver and hold on to. Okay, so we're going to take our first one, placing the wire, butting it up against where our tape is, stretch a little bit more of the parafilm, and we're going to wrap it around twice. Take our next one, butting it up so that it's nice and close to our other flower, but again below that stamen section. Okay, so taking our last one, stretching our parafilm. Oh. If it breaks, you can just finish that off, stretch it, a brand new piece, and wrap around a couple of times. All right, so I'm just going to move all of these to make sure that they're all in a nice position, that they're nice and open. Now that we've got our first row, what we're going to do is actually work our parafilm all the way to the base and finish it off before we do our next row. Start the exact same thing. Now I am going to come down by an extra millimetre or 2. I don't want the next row to be crushing our first, so we want to leave a little bit of room between them to breathe. Okay, so now we're going to make sure that we're in between 2 of our first row, and like I said, just down a little bit, just so that you can see that there's a bit of a gap so they're not pushing on each other. Go around, make sure it's in a nice position, grab our next one, space that between our next 2, again making sure we're nice and low. I think the biggest mistake that everybody makes where they have the wires poking out of these, or where it's not looking quite perfect and it disintegrates, is just that you have to allow enough time in the days for them to be nice and firm, and you also need to give each row some breathing room from the other, because that's really the two main tips to watch out for, and make sure that you're doing these right. I'm going to take some of the leaves that I've already done, and what I've done with these is just wrap them with some parafilm. So just take a section of parafilm, and to individually wire, all you do is rest it up near the top, stretch it, give it a little spin, and then slowly draw it down on that diagonal like we've been doing. Just stretching and spinning, and break that off. Now, I'm going to line them up into our sizes that we want. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to wire these all nicely together, and then we're going to paint them in gold afterwards. The reason why I'm not painting them first is that when you go to touch them, you'll end up getting some of the gold all over you, and it can be hard to do touch-ups in this gold. So we're going to make the whole spray, and then we can hold on to it easily and paint it that way. So you take your first one, wrap the parafilm around at the start, just spin it a few times and draw it down so that it's about a centimetre of the way down your stem. Then we're going to take our first medium-sized one. You can take your fingers or you can use the pliers as well, and I just want to bend it about a centimetre away from the actual leaf itself. The most important thing with this is to make sure that you're not placing your leaf all the way butted up against. Having this little kick out happen a centimetre further away rather than right there at the leaf is what will make it look more realistic, and it will stop them from breaking so easily. Okay, so just a couple of spins. We're not trying to go too much further down, and we want to take our next one, do the same, and we're going to slot that on the other side. Okay, so we'll come up, take our parafilm, wrap it around a couple of times so that it's secure, and then work your way down to the end. You can just break that off. So you can have a little bit of a fiddle with them, you can change them a touch, but just remember, the same as the petals, you want to do all of your movements on the wire itself rather than pulling and tugging on your leaves. So you can bend them around, you can place one so that it comes up, you can even bend the entire wire to get some movement, but just remember, always working with the wire. Okay, so now we're going to be painting. I'm just using a little bit of clear alcohol, not a huge amount at all, because we want this to be reasonably thick. I'm just going to tap in a bit of our gold. You can see here how it looks like pure gold rather than a gold luster that just has a lot of sparkle and a lot of shimmer to it. This is quite a metallic look, which is what we're going for. So we're going to be painting now all of our leaves in this. Just scrape off any excess, and then we're just going to brush straight over, making sure that we get the sides and the back as well. So I'm just going to allow a little bit of our ivory to poke through.